And Ian, we want to kind of see them return to that. We want to see them have that energy. And what goes back into those transitions is maybe utilising a situation where they are right now and making sure they can build. So let's talk about the competitions they can win. Serie A is going to be one thing, and we'll talk about the gap to Inter Milan in a second, but Europa League, that has to be one that they circle and look and think to themselves, this is something that we can really achieve this year.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to see from Juventus is progression. We want to see movement in the right direction. We want to see, I would say, a more pleasing on the eye style of football. It's been very inconsistent. The reason why we watch Juventus Football Club more often than not, especially here in America, is because Weston McKennie's performing there and we want to see him perform well. At the same time, they are a group of players that have underperformed and at times been pretty average. Last season, no different. But at the same time, European football is always going to be the target for a club like Juventus. I remember, obviously, the days previous to what they've gone through recently, where they were challenging for Champions Leagues.
Phenomenal team.
Every single year.
Phenomenal.
I mean, you can go through, I mean, when I watched them play, Vialli was up top for them, right? So you've got some players who have come through the ranks since then and not necessarily lived up to the standard. But at the same time, it's still Juventus Football Club, and with that history comes a great deal of expectation. So it is no different that they go into the season looking to win a trophy. Is it a domestic trophy? Sure. Can they compete? I think they could potentially compete if we see a sloppy season from an Inter. But I do think that what they've done off-season has been pretty spectacular. The moves they've made. The Vlahovic one is quite interesting to me. They've obviously given up on him. They spent a fortune on him. But they've obviously given up on the fact that he's not going to be the one who scores the goals for you. So they're deciding to rotate. Kolo Muani comes back into the club, and obviously now as a permanent move. I actually think they've made some pretty spectacular moves. I mean, take a look at what they've done. They are busy, they are active, and if it's players going out the door, sure, understandable. But players coming indoor is pretty exceptional. Not only Kolo Muani, Celik's come in, Boga's come in, and Ekator has come in. Attacking and also wide. Alabegovic is a player that will be obviously celebrated for his move, at around about 40 million coming in through the door from Leverkusen. These are talented players. Alabegovic is going to be a youngster who can help them in that direction as well.
Yep.
I just think that Juve are trying to look at this not necessarily for right now. They want to have European success. And to your point, I do think they have a feeling they can win that Europa League. But I do think that domestically, what their title is they want to win the domestic title. They want to be Serie A champions.
Yep.
They want to celebrate in Italy once again. They want to prove the giant that they once were and hope to be truly once again. It's always interesting me watching domestic battle because Inter over the last few years has been very dominant. But at the same time, that second place and that third place, Napoli has been there, Roma most recently there, Milan obviously most recently. There's been a bit of rotation with champions. So I'm intrigued to see how this plays out. Spalletti, I believe in big time because I do think that he's the type of guy that wouldn't be at Juventus if it wasn't run right above him. And he's now been given funds, JD, to go play with, and it looks to me like he's done good business.
I'm never going to question Spalletti's history because I think he's one of the managers in recent history that deserves the ultimate amount of respect for what he's been able to achieve. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and just ask you, do you feel like he has enough in terms of just juice, in terms of energy, in terms of what he can create right now with this squad to turn around and do the things that you've just spoken about and crown themselves as Scudetto champions?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, even if you look at the team that took on against Nice today, they've got youngster Moretti, Milik obviously coming back, who's had a horrible time through injury. Zagrova, who didn't perform well for them last season, didn't even score a single goal in his first season at Juventus, needs to do better. Defensively, relatively solid. They've got a bit of experience along the back line. But let's just take a little bit of a view about the newcomers who've come in through the door, right? Kolo Muani brings a great deal of experience as well as pace and finishing. We want to see more? Absolutely.
Yep.
If you give him the keys and it's not a battle with him and Vlahovic, then yeah, maybe he can actually score a lot more goals for you. Boga brings a bit of creativity and he's a talented player in possession of the ball. And then, of course, you look at the two youngsters, Ekator and Alabegovic. These are players that are for future development, but also can help you now.
I think in the past we've had the question mark as to whether or not who was their focal point, who was the player that they could rely on. If I look at Inter, we know who their focal point is, and they do actually vary in terms of throughout the season. But we know in terms of who we can trust in those big moments, it's always Lautaro Martinez. When you think about the other teams, in terms of your Romas or your Napolis, you know who you're trusting in the big moments. I think with Juventus, when we have our question marks, we've looked at, is it Vlahovic's team? Is it Openda's team? Is it Jonathan David's team? Who are we relying on to go and get us 20, 30 goals within a season and say this is our leader in terms of in the final third? Who's that person for you right now in the Juventus shirt?
For me, I'm a big fan of Jonathan David, right? Full stop. I love Jonathan David. I think he's a goal scorer. I think you've got to make him happy and make him number one. And if you make him number one, he can actually prove a return for you. I love the Kolo Muani signing. I obviously watched him very closely when he was in the Bundesliga. He was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal in the Bundesliga. And that's why the big price tag was paid for him. So, yes, I want to see a goal scorer, not necessarily a midfield leader. But can we just give a little bit of respect to Weston McKennie for what he does
100%.
at Juventus? This is the first pre-season I've gone into, I think, over the last 4 years, where we've not debated his future. Spalletti's kind of building around Weston a little bit here. People laugh at him because he's an American and maybe don't give him as much credit. Weston McKennie's a massive piece of this process to success for Spalletti. So Juventus need to start to build around players who have been at the club for a long period of time, who understand the DNA. But you also got these new boys, you've got to settle them in pretty quickly and get an immediate return. I can't exactly sit here and say over the last 3 years there's been a great return from the newcomers, that's for sure.
We spoke about it, and I'm going to bring it full circle because I spoke about the Europa League to start the segment. We squeezed in the Scudetto in the middle of it, spoke about the incomings in terms of the players. But here are some of the actual teams, and these are the notable favourites in terms of the sides in the Europa League. And we're going to call these the over-early favourites, right? We don't know how this is always going to play out. And look at some of these big names in respect in terms of who they are. Crystal Palace, Sunderland, Marseille, Bayer Leverkusen, and of course, Milan, who we've already spoken about. Do Juventus deserve the title as favourites going into this one, and should they carry that confidence with the Europa League only around the corner?
Well, Europa League is always a very difficult one, but it's become much more easier to predict, obviously, with the Champions League change and the new format change. It's been obviously very successful for the English teams. Most recently, they've had success. And I think if you were to look at where the success would come again, it would be the English teams. Why? Because of the money. Why? Because of the depth. They have depth, they have the ability to rotate. There's a lot of teams that are competing there from the English League, the Premier League, obviously, that are not necessarily battling for top 4 or top 5. They would love to be in top 4 and top 5, which guarantees a Champions League spot. But if you can go and win a European trophy, like we've just seen across a multitude of the English teams, in particular Villa in this competition, what that does for your football club, sometimes it's more important, JD, than actually getting a Champions League spot. What do you get if you win a Europa League? You automatically get a Champions League spot. So I'll be very surprised if Juventus don't go into this actually prioritising the Europa League more than anything else. Sure, they want to guarantee a top 4 place. Absolutely. In the Italian League, Juventus's DNA and the club the size that they are, they have to. But you think that Juve are going into that competition not looking around thinking, all right, the standard of English team that's competing this year hasn't been of recent years. We've got a real chance here. And Juve's squad that's been put together with that manager at the helm, they could win it.
A lot of pressure on Spalletti, a lot of pressure on Juventus going into this season. We'll tell very, very soon. We want to have a bit of fun after the break?
Yeah.
Let's have a bit of fun.
Let's do it.